Hey guys, welcome back. This channel is dedicated to all things personal finance related. In this video, we're going to be talking about real estate and specifically how to invest using the BRRRR strategy. Now, BRRRR is just an acronym. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. In essence, it's a methodology that helps you attempt to acquire a large number of properties, rental properties, in a relatively short amount of time. Now, a lot of you guys know that investing in real estate is one of the most tried and true ways to generate long-term wealth. But the problem with investing in real estate is it's expensive. You see, if you're trying to buy a house for yourself to live in, there's a lot of good programs out there where your down payment can be relatively low. If you're a military veteran, you might be able to qualify for a 0% down payment with a VA loan, or maybe a 3.5% down payment with an FHA loan. There's a couple of different 5% options as well, etc., etc. So if you're looking to buy a home that costs, let's just keep the numbers nice and simple. If you're trying to buy a house that's worth $200,000 with an FHA loan that anybody can qualify for, assuming you got the credit score and income and whatnot, then you only need a $7,000 down payment in addition to your other miscellaneous closing costs. Now, $7,000 is still a decent chunk of change, but it's nothing prohibitively expensive. Now, contrast this with what banks typically want when you're putting down a down payment for a rental property. Usually banks want a 25% down payment. So that same $200,000 house, if you are going to buy it with the intention of using it as a rental, a bank would want a $50,000 down payment in addition to the rest of the closing costs. So grand total, you might be paying $55,000 to $60,000 at the closing table in order to buy this house. So when you contrast $50,000 for a down payment on a rental versus maybe $7,000 with an FHA loan if you plan on living in it, that's a massive difference. And the problem is that maybe you had $50,000 that you had saved up and you were able to buy this house as a rental, but now you're broke because you just spent your entire life savings. So you were able to buy one rental property, but how are you supposed to buy house number 2, 3, and 4 so that you can scale up your business? Even if you have a pretty good rate of savings, it's probably going to take you several years before you can save up another $50,000 to buy your second rental property. So what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to grow your business? Well, one way that you can try to grow your business rapidly is by trying to use this BRRRR technique. Now, in a perfect scenario, this BRRRR technique is able to get you most or all of that money that you spent as a down payment back so that you can use that money again for a different house. So the way this works is we're not looking for nice houses on the MLS. Instead, we're looking for homes that need a little TLC. They need to be fixed up and remodeled. So take this house, for example. I mean, this kitchen is literally falling apart. These cabinets are destroyed. The wallpaper background, the old appliances, like this kitchen is a disaster area. Nobody that is actually wanting to buy this house to live in for themselves is wanting to buy this house. This is not a livable house. And look at this living room, the dark wooden panels and the beat up, disgusting fireplace. Like, this living room is dark and depressing. I don't want to live in this house. So even though this house is currently a train wreck, that sort of makes it a perfect candidate to try to implement this BRRRR strategy. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Because if you'll notice, that first R is rehab. So we're trying to find homes that we can rehab and fix them up, make them nice again, and increase the value of that home. Now, 99% of people that are buying houses are buying that house for themselves. They themselves want to live in that house. Ain't nobody buying that house so that they can live in it, because nobody wants to spend a bunch of money on a down payment and go through the process of buying a home only to have a train wreck of a house waiting for them that they need to fix up and repair. People want to buy a house that's already nice that they can just move into and start their lives. The only people that are buying beat up, busted houses like this are investors like you and I. So when you've eliminated 99% of the people that are trying to buy a house because they don't want to buy a busted up house like this, what do you think that does to the price when the overwhelming majority of people don't want the house? The price drops significantly. So maybe every single house on this particular street and neighborhood, maybe the average house is worth about $200,000. But this busted up piece of junk might be selling for only $120,000 because nobody wants it. But with a little work, we can rip out those cabinets, put on some new countertops, some backsplash tiles, and we can turn this kitchen around and turn it into something respectable. And that fireplace, we can paint over that, get rid of that wood paneling that's dark and dreary, open up that window a little bit, get some natural light in here, and now this is a real living room that somebody can be proud of. Now yes, it is going to cost a little bit of money to do the necessary repairs, but trust me, the money is going to be well spent because the value of this home is then going to skyrocket, and we can fully utilize that new value of that home with this BRRRR technique. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the financial side of things and see how something like this might work, where you can rapidly buy house after house after house and grow your portfolio with the BRRRR method. All right, so we have already established that the average house on that neighborhood or on that block is worth $200,000. So if we were going to buy the average house, then at a 25% down payment, we would need to bring $50,000 to the closing table. And in addition to your, closing costs, etc. So that's going to eat through your savings very, very rapidly. There's a very limited number of houses that most people can buy at $50,000 a pop, and because then you're going to have to save probably for a couple of years in order to replenish that money. But now let's look and see what happens if we buy that $120,000 piece of trash, fix it up and make it nice, and utilize this BRRRR technique. So instead, we're going to buy a house that's worth $120,000. So at a 25% down payment for this, that's going to come out to $30,000. And then maybe we spend another $30,000 fixing the place up on the rehab. We get rid of that busted up kitchen, we repaint the fireplace, get rid of that wood paneling, etc. So let's just say we spend $30,000 painting this stuff up, making it look nice, etc. So all in, we have spent $60,000 on this house, and we have a loan for $90,000. All right. Now, once we fixed up the house, we are going to get a tenant in there as soon as possible so that they can start paying rent, so we can start having income to pay that mortgage, so we're not just paying it out of pocket. But the good news is now we actually have a nice house. We have one that's at least as nice as every other house on the block, and who knows, maybe even a little bit nicer. So the rent that you're going to get on this newly remodeled house is probably going to be pretty decent. So that was the buy, the rehab, and the rent phase of the process. Now the next R is refinance. Now most lenders have a seasoning period before you can refinance once you bought this house the first time. Some lenders want you to have this loan in place for at least 6 months. Other lenders want it to be in place for a year before you move on to the next phase, which is refinancing. But when you refinance the house, they're going to come out and do another appraisal to see what the house is worth so that they can give you the proper loan. But just because you bought the house at 120 and you put $30,000 worth of rehab, the price of the house does not mean that it's 120 plus 30 or $150,000. That does not mean that that's what the house is worth. That's not the way the free market system works. I mean, let's think about this for a minute. If every other house in the neighborhood is worth $200,000 and your house is equally nice or even nicer than all of their houses, what do you think your house is worth? Yeah, it's worth at least $200,000. So this was your original value. But now the home is worth, let's just say $200,000. That is your new appraisal value. I don't know, I think that's how you spell appraisal. All right, so same rules apply when you refinance. The bank is going to want a 25% down payment, or in other words, they want a 75% loan to value ratio. So with a $200,000 appraisal, that means that they want at least $50,000 in equity, and they'll give you a loan for the other $150,000. So now your situation looks like this. The $200,000 house, you're going to have a $150,000 loan, and then that means that you're going to have $50,000 in equity. All right? Now, what's going to happen with this $150,000 loan? Where does that money that they're loaning you actually go? Well, in this case, it's going to go to pay off your existing loan. All of your existing loans have to be wiped out in order for them to give you this new loan. So of this $150,000, $90,000 of it is going to pay off your existing loan. And that leaves you with $60,000 left. Where does that $60,000 go? Now, I already did the math and made sure everything kind of lined up perfectly for the sake of this educational video. Real life scenarios may not work out quite this perfectly. But the bank is going to give you $60,000, and $60,000 is the total amount that you paid for the house originally. It was a $30,000 down payment and $30,000 worth of rehab. So you spent $60,000 in order to buy and fix this place up, and then a year later when you refinance this thing, the bank is going to give you $60,000 back. So you still own the house, but essentially you got 100% of your money back. So if you got 100% of your money back, your down payment and your rehab costs back, if you now have the house that you own plus $60,000 sitting in the bank, then you have $60,000 to go out and do this process again. Buy another house for $30,000 down payment and spend $30,000 to fix it up. And that's where the last R comes into play. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Once you refinance and you are able to withdraw some or all of that initial money that you spent in order to buy that house, then it's time to go out and look for a second house, and a third house, fourth house, etc. So the whole reason of why this works, mathematically speaking, is that, at least in this case, the total is more than the sum of its parts. When you bought this house for $120,000 and you spent an extra $30,000 rehabbing it, that means that grand total, it was $150,000. But the house was actually worth $200,000, not $150,000. You actually generated $50,000 worth of extra value simply by fixing it up. Because now, instead of only investors wanting to buy that house, now you've opened that house up to literally everyone. Now people are going to be fighting left and right to live in that nice, new, clean house. And that's going to raise the price of that home to this number as opposed to simply $150,000. Now, as I said, for the sake of this video, I made sure the numbers lined up nice and neat and perfectly so that you were able to get all of that initial money back at the end. That may or may not happen. You might not be able to get all of that money back, but even if you just get most of it back, that means you only need to save up just a little bit of money in order to get that next house, instead of a lot of money, saving up $50,000 to go buy a second home. And you'll also notice that I did not include closing costs into these calculations. I was trying to keep things as simple as possible just for illustrative purposes. Obviously, when you are doing this in real life, you're going to have to factor in your closing costs, and that will be an additional expense. So that is the way that people are able to rapidly scale their business, by being able to get back most or all of their initial funds. If you thought this video was insightful and useful, be sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up. It really helps the YouTube algorithm and helps channels like this grow. I have new videos every day, and as always, I'll see you all again next time. Thanks.